God, please just come into this space. I've been struggling. I really need you right now. I really need you right now.
I heard from God. I heard from God.
God is always trying to communicate with us. It's about if we're willing to communicate back, we're willing to see the signs that He's trying to give to us.
Because, I'm not competing with God. I'm not competing with God,
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Sacred Sports Souls podcast. I am your host, Talia Edmonds, and I am here today with one of my really, really good friends, one of my best friends, and my roommate, and this happens to be her room that we're in. So thank you, Ellie, for letting us shoot in your room. How do you feel? Are you nervous?
Yeah, nervous. There's a lot of cameras. It's making me nervous.
It's okay. Well, this is what I tell all my guests before they come on is like, let's just speak your truth. Like, I'll do the navigating of the conversation, and then, because me and Ellie's sitting here, like, literally in this same exact room, and we talk all the time.
For hours.
For, like, literal hours. And
yeah.
It's been that more so recently, which has been exactly why I want you on this podcast. And I also usually open it up by telling my guests why I have them on here, so it might get a little sentimental, but so I guess I'll start with the purpose of the podcast. I think is, so it's the Sacred Sports Souls podcast, and I have come on here to want to highlight people in my life that I feel like God has strategically placed for reasons that I might not understand yet, but for you, I definitely have to sit in and pray on why am I having this person on the podcast? Mm-hmm. And I told you this yesterday, but one of the things is I grew up in Michigan, Midwest through and through. I have family here in Hawaii, and we did a lot of traveling back and forth from here, but California is like a foreign land.
Yes. Also, the Midwest is foreign to me.
Exactly.
I have no idea what's over there.
And one of my favorite parts about Ellie is that she is from LA. She is an LA girl. And I had no idea not about LA people, because that sounds bad, because it's do all of these places have preconceived notions about the people there? And they kind of do, though.
Mm-hmm. Especially now.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know, growing up in LA and you being a LA girl, how do you feel like that shaped you, or what do you feel like that growing up there kind of has shown you?
I think the product of your environment is very true, because if you kind of know me and who I am, it's very similar to my friends at home in LA. And then I also, I don't know, just the culture in LA is different too, which when I came here, it made me appreciative of the culture here, but LA is just so different, when it comes to the social aspect, social media, it's just very different, and I think there's a lot of influence that happens in LA too.
I think so how far do you live from Hollywood? Where are you from in LA exactly?
I went to 3 different high schools, and I kind of jumped around, but towards the end of my high school, I lived in West Hollywood, so that's kind of where I'm familiar with, I would say.
Okay.
West Hollywood, my auntie lived there, and then, but in the beginning of my high school, I lived in a small little town called Whittier. So I went to Whittier Christian High School for the first 2.5 years.
Which we'll get into.
Yeah. Which was an experience for sure. And then, but I'm definitely familiar with more the city life for sure.
Okay.
Which, yeah.
And so you, like I said, people have this idea of what LA people are like. What do you think people think about LA people, and then what do you think they're actually like just being from there?
I think now it's very much influencers, because a lot of influencers pick up their stuff from Connecticut, and then they move to Los Angeles, and they're like, oh, I'm from LA. It's no, you're not. You're kind of just, you're there for being an influencer, which is different. But the people that I've met, that I've been lucky enough to have 10 plus years of friendship with, they're so authentic, and it's kind of the authentic part of LA, I would say. Yeah. So I'm lucky enough to meet all of my friends from when I was in middle school to high school until now. So
and I think So this is also going on to the theme of the podcast, and I have athletes on here, and this is so funny because you could be thinking, Ellie's not an athlete, but this is not true because Ellie actually...
I played here.
Yeah.
I played softball for 2.5 years, and I went to Hilo my freshman year, and I played there too. So I guess I'm a retired athlete.
Yeah, so growing up, softball was the sport that you and your sister played
Yes, me
as
and my
well.
sister, we had like a cul-de-sac of 2 siblings, 2 sisters around our cul-de-sac, and we all played softball. So yeah, I've been playing. I started pretty late. I started when I was 12 though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you grew up playing like travel and
All
that kind of stuff. High school. Did you played for all of when you went to like switch all of those
2.
high schools too?
Because
Okay.
I only went to one high school for a month.
Oh.
Yeah, so I jumped around quite a bit. Yeah.
And so what made you want to go to Hilo to play?
Softball. I
Okay.
guess like the coaches. I guess when I heard Hawaii, I was just like, okay, like why not? Like I'm from Southern California. Like I like the beach, you know. So I was just like intrigued by the ocean, I guess. And I was like, oh, the beach is down the street. And I actually had offers from Hilo and this school, but then I chose Hilo because they offered more money. So I ended up going there, and then didn't really like it as much because I went from city to suburb, so it was completely different, and kind of was depressed there because I guess there was nothing to do. And then
This is very culture. We talk about the
culture shock for
of
sure,
it,
yeah. And then I ended up moving here, and there's a bit of both city life and I guess suburbs, so I enjoyed it here more. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, I guess the makeup of Hawaii, we're like kind of assuming that they know. But so Hilo is on the Big Island, and we are on Oahu, which is where UH Manoa is. And so you ended up transferring here after you said 1 year at
1 year at Hilo, yeah.
Hilo, yeah. And then I think COVID happened, and that's
COVID
ultimately
happened.
kind of why you ended up stop playing. But if you want to just
and I also
touch on
tore
that.
my ACL, so it was kind of like a combination between ACL, COVID happening, it was like rehab, and then I didn't really know when season was going to start, so it was kind of like all up in the air. And then I started thinking, and I was like, do I really want to play softball for all 4 years, you know? And then I was like, there's so much other stuff I could be doing. Like now I could watch sunset.
Yeah.
Which during softball we had late practice, so I never was able to do that. So it just gave me like more freedom, I guess. And people always ask me like, do you miss playing it? And then I see you guys getting up at like 4 a.m. When you guys had double days, I was like, no, I don't miss it at all. Like you guys are at school the whole day. I'm like, no, I don't miss
Ellie's, it's so funny because we all, it's me, Riley, Pawnee, and Liv, and then Ellie that live here. And so Ellie's actually been here for longer than I have, like a semester longer, and living with the athletes. And so you get to literally live out that thought that everybody has in during their career, like, what if I just stop playing? You get to live that life out, and then you also get to see how your life would have went if you
kept playing.
Yeah, if you would have kept playing. So, okay, in general, we'll kind of sum up this part, but you don't regret not playing? Do you feel that way?
I definitely miss it. Like, it was just the first game, the season opener last week, and I drove past the field, and I kind of was like, oh, that kind of makes me sad, but then it opened so many, like, other opportunities, and, like, I got to explore this island even more, so I think I'm grateful for the experience, but I don't think I would change it.
Yeah, and I think like sports and that's a big part of this podcast as well, is the sacred sports souls, is that no matter where you end up going in your athletic career, like whether you just play in high school, just play in middle school, you played 1 year of JV like sports, like it doesn't matter if you keep going in college or not, but I think that it really becomes ingrained into who you are and kind of how you go about your life, because sports teaches you so much about life, and
gives you like discipline too.
That's facts, and it's also on top of that, like the discipline part it's a vehicle for you to get so many other opportunities, like even just to live here, to be in Hawaii, just to have met the people that you've met. I think that, and now I'm speaking exactly to our relationship, and if you would have never played softball, we would have never met.
You think? I think we would have still met.
If you were never here playing, like if you would have if softball would have never brought you here.
Yeah, that is true.
But yes, I think in some ways too that God has placed a lot of the people in my life, Ellie included, like that I would have still met even if it wasn't how we met now. I think some people are just destined to be in your life, and God really has a purpose for them. And so that's a big reason why I wanted you on here today, is just because you really bring like a diverse experience to just, you're like that athlete still lives in you, and the things that you learn through it, and the discipline and stuff. And so I'm excited to just talk with you about everything, about your perspective, not just sport, not just life, not just God, but about all the things that we got going on. So I was always like, as I was praying on this too, like trying to figure out where do we even start this podcast, because we've talked about so much stuff. And I think one of the most valuable things that you have taught me is kind of how growing up in church, which your family was very traditional and going to church, and then you also went to a private Christian high school for a while. But we've talked, those conversations have just a lot been about what those experiences were like. So I don't know if you want to just like touch a little bit on that, growing up like that, but then also where that kind of led you to before this year, when you have kind of started coming to Christ a little bit. But.
Yeah, so going to like, well, I'll start in middle school. My parents just didn't like the people that I was hanging out with, so they decided to send me to a private Christian high school because they thought that would kind of like put me on the right track or whatever. And they also forced me to go to church every Sunday because they're very traditionally like Christian and stuff like that. So I went to church every Sunday, not really knowing. It was kind of just like a routine thing for me. And going to a private Christian high school, I think that kind of introduced me to, I guess, the whole, what you talked about on your TikTok. If you haven't checked that out, you should go check that out.
Good shout.
But you talk about religion versus a relationship with God, and I think the private Christian high school that I went to, a lot of people were just more based on religion than their relationship with Christ, so that kind of, I guess, like, icked me out.
No,
Christ, I was like, why would I want to, like, believe in the same thing you do when you're actually a really bad person? And, you know, you kind of put yourself on a higher pedestal and look down on me for certain things, like, you know, and it just kind of like strayed me away, which led me not to go to church for 7 years until this January, I guess. Yeah, but it was just like kind of like a bad image that was installed in my head, and even like with my parents just like kind of forcing me to go to church every weekend kind of made me resent it. And then we also talked about this, how our parents are just humans, and they're just trying to navigate us through the best way they can, which I understand now as I'm growing my relationship with Christ. But yeah, it just kind of put a bad narrative in my head about the whole traditional Christian, I guess, image.
Okay, if you don't, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but like, what were some of the things that like during that time you felt like those girls, because typically, you know, in high school, it's really the girls that you're around and those types of things that left that just gross, kind of nasty feeling. Like, what were some of the things that they were doing, you felt like?
They would just, like, well, in high school, everything's petty, you know? Like, it goes from, like, bad talking, others making up rumors, and then, like, they were just kind of, like, bullies, and then I would see them singing in chapel, and like I'd be like, "What are you doing up there?"
You're like actually, you're really mean.
You're so rude. Like, what are you doing up there? And it's kind of like a fake persona that they would put, and they would be like, "Well, everything's okay because I believe in God," or whatever. Their relationship is. Like, I'm a Christian, so like I get to do this, that, and the third, and it's not okay if you do it because it's just like just. The stereotypical, I guess, Christian that I had in my head was what all the girls in my school were like.
Did you feel that way when you went to church also, that it was kind of like...
Yeah. It was definitely a judgy atmosphere because even with the parents, like I told you, my mom, I felt bad for her because her kids were like A+ students, and they were getting scholarships to all these Ivy Leagues, and like I'm over here and I play a sport, which is like so crazy.
I like to hit a ball for fun.
Which is so crazy to like. I went to a Christian Korean traditional church, which nobody plays sports when you're Korean, so it was very different for sure. Like we had tournaments on Sundays, so like when we would miss a Sunday, all the parents would be like, "Where are you? Like, why haven't we seen you?" And I was like, "I play a sport," So it was a bit different, a lot of, I felt like I was just judged as soon as I walked in, which there was a couple people that I still talk to now who are like my really good friends, but yeah, I just felt like judged when I went in there.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's like your experience is like not super uncommon for people when it comes to just like the high school thing, like the going
high school
to
thing's yeah.
it's so challenging because you're getting all these like young people like all trying to figure it out obviously too, and a lot of the things at that point you learn from your parents, like a lot of the things you learn, your behaviors and stuff, and how, you know, who you're above and who you're below, or like how to even out those playing fields, like whatever that might be, whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. And I think that, yeah, some of the stuff you just tell me about your high school just reminds me of like a movie.
No, yeah, if
like
y'all
a literal
seen, yeah,
movie.
Euphoria kind of depicts, I think the last high school I went to.
Yeah.
That's literally a good depiction of it.
So you went to that private Christian high school for what grades, and then you ended up leaving, yeah?
I ended up leaving because at that point I was already committed. So it didn't really matter. Like, I called my coach too, and he didn't really care like what high school I went to, as long as I maintained a certain GPA.
Okay, yeah.
And so I told my parents, and I was like, I don't like it here. Like, I would tell them that every day. Like, I don't like it here. I don't like the people. I have like 4 friends here. Like, I don't want to make new friends here. And even the people that I like met in middle school, they were all at different high schools, and I was still in touch with them. So I was like, I want to go to the high schools that they go to. Yeah. Just to experience high school, I guess. But they kind of just let me. So I was already committed, so they let me have my freedom, and that's why I ended up transferring. Yeah, so so Elijah and I have a small group that we have for student athletes on Tuesdays. That's a little shout out. I'll let you guys know more about that. But Ellie also comes to that small group, and this week we talked about identity and about how God has created us to be unique. And one of the things, like, there is this little thought that was most people were born original, but most people sadly will die as copies. And that just like hit. That's so true. So different. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that, just based on how you grew up and what you were just talking about, like being in church and stuff like that? Well, like, even like being from LA, it's very like trendy and stuff, and like it's a social media like influencer city now. But I would say like that's so true when everyone tries to copy other people and they keep trying to keep up with the trends, and it's like, for what? Like, why are you doing this? You know, like, which, I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of like the trends and stuff. Like, I am very easily influenced from social media, but I think like now I just realize like whatever content you put out, it's like people watch it because they like you. So you don't have to copy anybody else in order for them to like you, in a sense. Dude, that you just dropped a word. Yeah, I'm like, like there's no point of copying other people. Like, for what? Just be yourself. Be yourself. I think, and too, as we're kind of talking about high school and being easily influenced, I think that's such an age where you are easily influenced by the people you're around and by those things that feel like such like a life or death kind of situation. Like, if I don't fit in, then I actually feel like I'm going to be in a terrible position, a terrible headspace. But I think that as you're in that stage and age, you do try to copy more. You do try to like see, okay, this person's really popular. This person has something that I have. I want to be more like that. And in that process, you are like just becoming unoriginal. Yeah, and it's like, for what? Why are you copying that person? Yeah. You know, like, for what? It just doesn't make sense to me, which took me a while to realize. And I feel like, that's me. Like, I think everybody can, at some point in your life, feel like, oh, I was easily influenced. And I think that that's a part of growing up, and it's about who you surround yourself with. We talk a lot about that, too, in small group. And that has been one of the coolest parts about our friendship now, is just kind of how it's grown into influencing each other in different ways, like in terms of our relationship with Christ. And so, as we well know, actually, you guys probably don't know when we filmed this, but Valentine's Day was yesterday. And man, as we're like, you're talking about social media and stuff, like, what Valentine's Day? Come on, let's just hear your thoughts on it. Valentine's Day, I think there's such a stereotype on Valentine's Day, because it's like, you need to have a Valentine, like you need to have like a significant other for Valentine's Day. But I think Valentine's Day is just like a day where it makes you more appreciative of love, and it kind of reminds you that love is everywhere. Like, love is everywhere you look, and no matter if it's platonic or in a relationship, like, it just makes you appreciative of the love that's surrounding you, and it makes you kind of like cherish it and like reminds you that it's just there. And it doesn't have to be romantically. That's also the thing, like a bouquet of roses, because roses are kind of tied into love and Valentine's Day. But it's like, you don't need to have a bouquet of flowers. I mean, it's still nice to have a bouquet of flowers.
It is a lot.
But like, I think it's such like a big thing, like, oh, you need to have a Valentine's Day, you need to have a boyfriend or girlfriend for Valentine's Day, but you don't have to. I think it just reminds you of love.
Dude, you just were spitting right there, because part of it too is the social media aspect of Valentine's Day is like,
which is crazy.
Crazy.
It shows you how fake social media is, because it's like, social media is such a good platform, but then on Valentine's Day, people will be popping up with all types of relationships that you're like, hold up, like you
was not acting like that on the 13th.
Right, like I'm confused. But it also shows you how fake social media is to a certain extent, because it's like people kind of just want a Valentine's Day to post about it or like to post on Instagram about it, but is that really your Valentine? Like, are you really loyal to that person? Do you really love that person? Because that's what Valentine's Day is supposed to be about, like love.
And that was so fitting. It's too fitting for, I think it's also easy to kind of come from a place of like, we talk about social media and like, it just makes it a little bit easier to judge people, because you're only getting the tiniest
what they want to show you.
Exactly.
That's what social media
is. So it gives you this kind of feeling of, okay, you can make judgments on people's lives because they're putting it out there for you to see in the smallest image of it. But I think that you're so right. Like, what is it really about? And I think that we can break this all the way down to like, what is love really? Like, like if you're, I made the joke about what are you doing on the 13th when you posted on the 14th? And that's partially because of my lived experiences of people acting one way on one day and claiming to be something that they're not, and then on the next day being like, oh, I'm actually in a happy, committed relationship, and I wasn't acting like that yesterday, though. Right. And I think that it's so easy to look at people's relationships on social media and idolize them and feel like that's what you want to attain, that's what you want to get. But you're right, how much of their relationship are you really seeing?
You know nothing. Social media is so fake.
You don't know anything. Yeah. You don't know anything. So, I don't know, what is love to you? Like, you're just talking about, how it's everywhere you look, every day.
It's everywhere. I just think love is just, well, God is love, first of all, because if you got God's love and you know that He loves you, then that's all you need, because you'll be fine with just that. But I think love is everywhere, from the ocean, the nature, to like your friends, relationships with friends. So I think love literally surrounds us.
I think I 100% agree with that, because I also, I believe God is love too, and I believe that it's so corny to say, kind of like, that is kind of corny to say that God is love, but when you think about what you're actually saying, you're saying that the creator of this universe, who created us in His image, if He is love, then we are also love. We're also meant to be love in people's lives. And like, we talk about how our job as followers of Christ is not to convert people. That was never anywhere in the Bible that we were put on this earth to go make people Christian and to shame them for if they're not. And I think that we talk about the church hurt and stuff that people have experienced, and that has been sometimes the traditional Christian religious way to go about it. But in reality, God is love and we are love, so we're only called to love. And I think that is one thing that God has shown me in all of my relationships, and the reason for this podcast even is how I love you and you love me, and that is constantly like, oh wow, we can see God actually working in our relationship because there's real love there. And so I think that, I think everybody's looking for love. Everybody wants love. It's so romanticized. And
we talked about this in small group, how our generation is so obsessed with love.
Obsessed.
Yeah, like obsessed. Everybody wants it, but it's like, do you really know what it actually is?
Yeah, and it's like, what are your standards for it? I think, whatever that quote is about accepting the love you think you deserve, that is facts. And as cliche as it is, I think cliches are cliches for a reason. But it's like, what kind of love are you accepting into your life? And I know that we both have experience of accepting love lesser than
we deserve.
Yeah. And that's ultimately too how we can know, like, dang, God's love has been the only love that has ever truly filled me. Like, we're not coming at you guys from like oh, you know, we've always known what love was. We've always known God is love. No, we've been in some
We've been in some up and downs for sure. Like, bottom barrel on the floor. Up and down bad. But it's okay. We up now. We up. It's fine. Yeah.
Ooh, and it's funny because and this is what friends are also for, though, is because we're there for each other.
No, we've been through a lot.
It all.
Yeah.
Through the hurt, through the wrong, through the bad decisions, through the love that felt right but was wrong.
It's
like
terrible.
I think. And that's really, if we talking about love, we're talking about friends, and just like you talk about platonic love, like, really look at your friends. They should be the people you surround yourself with should be that living, breathing representation of what love is. In your life. So, man, that just got me, I'm like sweating a little bit. That got me riled up.
I know, my hands are clammy.
We talk about God is love, and we touched on it a little bit about church hurt, like we vaguely kind of talked about it, but now we're going there. This is like, and this is a conversation that I think more people need to be having, especially as followers of Christ. But we're going to just go straight into the church hurt and how, like, people what we're talking about as God is love, that's not people's lived experiences with God. And I think that for me, it's been realizing that everybody has a idea of God in their head, whether that's a positive or a negative thing. I think if you ask anybody, and that's been one of my favorite conversations, and yours too now, is just like asking people, who do you think God is, and what's your relationship with God? And typically this conversation goes one of two ways, and one way is that, I grew up in church and I kind of just got like distant from God, but now I'm like figuring it out. Or the other direction is, I just have not had a good experience with either Christians or in the church. And this conversation is more common with people who are now part of like just distant and identify as distant from God in terms of their sexuality and their gender identity. And I think that this is a great conversation for us to have because of what your kind of perception and relationship is with not only God, but also with your sexuality.
Yeah, well, touching on like the church hurt and stuff, like when I would go to church, I would automatically feel judged. So I wasn't really, spoken about like my sexuality and stuff like that, which I recently just started getting into. But the whole idea of like the church condemning you if you like the other sex or something, that whole thing, I think that was probably the most challenging thing for me, because I'm like, why am I going to believe in someone who's going to condemn me for liking the other sex?
And I think that the conversation about same-sex attraction notoriously is one that makes people uncomfortable, like especially if you're living in this world of religion and you like to, go back to reference your scripture of like, homosexuality is a sin, and because it's a sin, I'm going to walk around and tell these people that they're going to hell. Like we talked about,
like, who are you to judge me? If you're saying that, then what makes you better than me? Like,
what makes my sin any worse than your sin that you're now trying to tell me that if I don't change the way I'm living my life that I'm gonna go to hell? And as much as that may be true, like in the like you're coming from this place of like trying to help them, I guess. What person is gonna want to talk to you when you open up with, hey, I'm a Christian, and by the way, you're going to hell because you like women and you're a woman. Like, I don't think that gets us anywhere.
Like, what makes you think I'll listen to you now because you said that to me? Actually, I'm gonna take a step back.
And this God that you're claiming to serve, like, now I don't want nothing to do with him either.
Yeah, because it's like, if he's telling that to you, then I don't want anything to do with it.
If he told you that,
I was like, I'm done. I don't want anything to do with that.
And so I think, okay, and you've obviously, like, now we've talked more about it, and just where are you now then with this? And just honestly, straight up, where are you?
Well, I think one of like the biggest questions for me when I got back into like my journey with Christ and stuff was the whole question of like, well, I'm bisexual, so where does that leave me?
Yeah.
You know, but I think I'm building my relationship with Christ, and I think as long as I have that relationship with him, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, regardless if they claim to be a Christian or not. Like, if I have a relationship with him and we know what it is, like, I personally don't care what you think.
No,
because you're
for
just
real.
a worldly character that's here. Like, you don't get to tell me if I'm going to heaven or not. So, yeah.
Bro, you just got the Holy Spirit like moving. I'm about to cry. That was so good. I mean, okay, also this is so funny because we talk about Christ being able to transform you from the inside out. And Ellie has she just started going back to church like at the beginning, the first Sunday of this month. And it's been crazy to see how not only have our conversations evolved, but like when you go and you come back and you tell me like what conversations you're having with other people, bro, she be spitting some advice, bro. Like, actually,
I think I've had the most conversations just randomly about God. Like, I told someone the other day that I'd pray for them, and then like that kind of like took me back, and I was like, did I really just say I'll pray for you? You know? And then like I was like, yeah. I was like, okay.
No, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was like, okay. But yeah, I've had so many conversations about God, which I never thought I would, but I think, again, like, I had such a stigma in my head of, like, God, I guess, and I think there's a huge difference between, your relationship with Christ and religion, and I think a lot of people, like, in our generation just have to figure that out, and have to know that it's two completely different things.
And it's like, we're not even... Anybody who's watching this, no matter what you identify as, like your sexuality, your gender, like any of these identities that you have just been, that's who you are and that's who your life is. Like, we're not trying to convert you.
Right. Like, no one's supposed to try to convert you.
No one's supposed to try to convert you.
Yeah.
And we're also not coming from a place of judgment, which I think that is also the biggest issue. We talk about that is when you're coming from a position of judgment, like people feel that. They don't like sitting in that space. And I personally, I don't either. Like, who does? Who likes to be judged? And so I think that all we can do is encourage and submit people to just like whatever this schema or like idea of God that you have in your head and this relationship with the church that you probably have. And I obviously don't know everybody watching this, and we don't know everybody watching this, but I think that a lot of people typically do have some trauma, maybe, if you want to call it, like trauma, like in the back.
Stereotype.
Yes, stereotypes of what church people might be like, or what church is like, or what people who believe in God are like, or what God himself is like. We just encourage you to try to unpack some of that, you know? Find some people who will talk to you about God, and you can figure that out too, and just know that you're not walking alone in it, because you talk about that too, just being on this journey. I like that, the way that it's a journey, because even though it's been 2 months,
yeah, I know,
it's felt like, have you felt like it's been a longer journey than just 2 months?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think this year has gone by kind of like slow but then fast in a way. So, but it like, even being like surrounded by Christians and like growing up religiously, you know, for however long, I'm like 24, so that's like half my life, but I'm just starting my journey now, even though I've been to church a countless amount of times, and I went to a private Christian high school, so.
I think we also have to speak on this, because this has been one of my favorite fruits of kind of your journey thus far, but your relationship with your parents, like.
Oh yeah, it's definitely changed a lot, just because like, even when I came out to my mom, I'm actually going to talk about that, but when I came out to my mom, she came from a place where it's like, I'm going to love you regardless, which kind of like, we were like just at a random coffee shop, like crying to each other. And like, she was just saying like, I still love you, you know, all this stuff. Like, I can see it now, like she's trying her best just to like love. And that's like the embodiment of what God is, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, she doesn't quite necessarily like, I guess, accept me, but it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, she loves me, and she's gonna love me for who I am, regardless. And regardless of like everything that, and she like even cried when she was apologizing. She's like, "I'm sorry, I forced you to go to church," and I said, "It's okay.
Yeah,
you're just trying to do the best you can, and that's, you know, you felt comfort in the church, so you wanted to pass it down to me, but you just kind of went about it in a wrong way, because when you're young, like whatever your parents want you to do and force you to do. You kind of
I'm
resent
doing
it.
the opposite
Yeah,
of
like I'm
that.
gonna do the complete opposite of what you just said, just because it pissed me off.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So, yeah, my parents and I relationship has definitely become like a lot closer than I ever thought it would be. And like I find myself like just texting in our group chat like screenshots of like the sermon in church, which like I thought we would never do, you know. So it's just it's like it's a whole different, you know. It's like we're so far, but now we're getting closer, which is nice. Because it embodies like the love that.
Dude, you're really speaking to some like real stuff, and that's also something that I wanted to touch on too. Is like people like us who are really trying to understand this relationship over religion thing. A big part of that is, I think this one of the preconceptions that, or conceptions and stereotypes that people have of Christians is that Christians don't think for themselves. Which I can say that because I also used to think that. I literally used to think like you are all a bunch of little robot and sheep and you don't have any thoughts of your own. And as
Like
I'm,
a cult.
yeah, it's very cult-like and like all these things that these ideas that I had, and now that I'm deconstructing them and unpacking them, it's been more like, for me and my relationship with Christ, which is my personal relationship with him, just like yours is your personal relationship with him, it's like everything that we go through and everything that we're speaking to, like in terms of like all this stuff that can be seen as Bible stuff, or when we're talking about Christ, talking about God, referencing the Bible and all these things, it can seem religious, but in reality, we're just speaking on our experiences, like what we have actually gone through and what we've actually lived through, and one of those things for you that it's our testimony to what Christ has done in our lives, and one of those things really is like you're just speaking to it, and that's why I was about to cry. Partially because I cried, but also because I like it's so beautiful to see that the fruits of the Spirit in your life are all of these wonderful, beautiful things, like growing closer to your parents, which you never would have thought that you could have done. So I'm just so, I don't even know what the word is, like just happy, elated, like excited, and just really grateful and thankful that we serve a God that loves us so much that he can mend relationships that we could never mend on our own. This is, we have to go back because it's so funny because when I interview my guests, like they're obviously my friends, and so I know already a lot about, I try to talk to them before we have the podcast, so they're not just coming on blind, but it's really just me telling them like, hey, this is why I want you even to come on here. But one of the things the stories that Ellie told me yesterday, I was cracking up, was the thing about her telling her lash lady that she was going to pray for her.
Yeah.
So what how did that even come about?
So me and my lash lady, like we get into some conversations when she was doing my lashes, and she was kind of just telling me like what she was going through, because she's pregnant, and you know there's some medical stuff going on with her unborn baby, and then you know, obviously, she was doing my lashes, we were talking about it, and then I knocked out for however many hours.
Apparently I never got my lashes done, but apparently that just
I fell asleep, and then I woke up, and then when I was walking out, I was like, I hope everything will be fine with your baby, you know, like, I'll pray for you. And then I was like, have a good night, and then I turned around, and when I was walking out, I said, pray for you. I was like, did I really just say I'll pray for her? And then I came home and I was like, Talia, how do I pray for someone actually? Because now I'm confused.
No,
like,
it was so, like, I was actually cracking up because it, like, just, you're like, who? I didn't even.
I was like, do I even know how to pray? Because, like, the only time I've, like, prayed is, like, when I really want something. And I'm like, please, God, like, if you're real, like, make this happen for me. And then if it doesn't happen, then I just don't pray again.
Yeah.
If it happens, I like pray the next day. I'm like, thank you so much.
Oh, at least you thank him.
Yeah, I thank him, you know, got to. But yeah, that's my experience with prayer. I was like, I honestly don't even know how to pray.
And this is so fun. This is the best part about being on this walk with your friends is that, so I also tell you guys this, I really just started like a year ago, you know what I mean? Like that's relatively recent for somebody who I kind of grew up like same as Ellie, going in and out of church and those types of things. And my parents were both raised in church, but I really I chose to start my walk again last year. And I remember being in a very similar place. I was like, I don't know how to pray. And it felt like a stupid question. It felt like, oh, I grew up in church. Like I should know how to pray, right? But it's also the most, I was telling Ellie this, but the only time I would really pray, like have to pray out loud, because that's a different thing. Like praying out loud is like a different kind of, you work into it, but we'd be on like road trips and stuff, and my parents would randomly be like, all right, so Talia or Alika, you guys are gonna pray now for the trip. I'm like, this is the most awkward moment you could possibly put me in. I don't know how to do this. So it'd be like, hey God, like safe travels for us, like thanks, and then amen. But so you talked about how to pray, and I don't know, okay, from what we talked about last night, because I basically just gave her like the rundown of how me and Elijah pray, and kind of how I've understood prayer now being on my walk for like a year. But from what the conversation we had last night, like how would you say that you understood it, and that how you want to go about praying now?
Honestly, I think you're just having a conversation with God. You kind of just tell him things that are on your mind, and he's going to answer them regardless of the situation, whether you realize it now or later. But you kind of like give appreciation to him, thanks to him, just tell him your situation, and it's pretty much that's it. And
you were spitting, because that's exactly what I was going to pull up. And there's a verse in the Bible, and I think it's Philippians 4, and it's literally, we might have to pause so Philippians 4:6 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." But we talked exactly about what you were just saying, and it says it right there, just like in every situation, with thanksgiving, just present your request to God. Like there's
regardless
if
you're shameful or not, like he's not going to judge you.
He already he's standing there like, come on,
like he already knew you were going to do that. So you
like,
don't have to hide it.
Why hide it? You know, like, and I think that's the best part about also being on this walk, is you're learning that all these things that you have in the dark, like whatever it is, your traumas, your shames, your guilts, like all of the places you've never been able to forgive yourself or forgive others, like God asks you to bring these things to light. Because even if you're talking about like, I want to be a psychologist, or like I want to help athletes with their mental health, and even if I wasn't, imagine I wasn't a Christian, like I didn't follow Christ, the advice I would still give to an athlete is that, hey, you might have to unpack some things. And people talk about shadow work, people talk about like all of these things all the time about, you have some stuff that you're kind of keeping in the back that you might have repressed because it was hard to handle. But to heal, I'm going to need you to talk about these things. And that's exactly what Christ asks us to do. And I think it's not by coincidence that all of these things that are also healing practices for, people in the medical field, mental health professionals, are things that also come straight from the Bible. And so I've been trying to like kind of make these things work in my life and try to understand them in a more holistic way, because when you're walking with Christ, it's like it's every aspect of your life that you're presenting to him. It's not just like, oh, this part over here, but not this part. Like, oh, just my work, but not my school, or just my sport, but not my relationships. Like he wants it all. And I think that prayer is the perfect place to do that. It's the perfect time to spend with him. And I also, I was telling Elijah about how we talked about praying last night. And he was like, have I ever told you about the first prayer I ever prayed? He's like, nah. I was like, nah, not really. And he was like, yeah, we were on a bus, like on a trip after I just got baptized, and the bus like had broken down or whatever. But they needed somebody to pray for safe travels, and they asked me to. And he was like, I didn't know how to pray at that point. He was like, so I just
safe travels, because wasn't your parents? Yeah, y'all connected.
Wait, whoa. Yeah, you just might have did something there, but no, literally, like he said he closed his eyes and he said, Lord, I pray for safe travels, amen. And everybody said amen. And he was like, I felt like, dang, nobody said anything to me about it. And he was like, that's when he learned that any prayer is a good prayer, no matter what it sounds like, no matter what it looks like. But if you want some basic structure to it, you open it up to, your Lord, and then you just give thanks to all the things in your life that you have because of him. And then you lay it on the table, lay whatever out there that you need to, and then you just pray in Jesus' name, amen. So that was our little short lesson on
prayer.
On prayer. And so, so on that last note of just talking about prayer, I just want to thank you all for watching and for your encouragement over the last couple weeks. This is now episode 5, which is so crazy because creating content is like a whole different thing for me, and I am trying to get back on TikTok. So if you don't follow me, and this is so perfect because she is like my TikTok guru. But I'm so excited to just be able to interact with everybody more and get more of the word that is being really just preached in this podcast for everyone to see. So Ellie, is there anything that you want to just leave with anybody watching this?
I think maybe just like don't condemn yourself, you know, to your relationship with God just because of your experience, or like, I guess, yeah, just don't condemn yourself before you even start on the journey. That's what I would say, because there's judgment all around, so obviously people are going to judge you regardless, but I don't know, I think just taking that one small step forward is huge, you know, and you're changing the whole depiction of your relationship with God, which is, I think it's so important, especially in our generation, because our generation is going to be the one kind of who starts it, I think, in the future, and kind of just breaking the stereotype of traditional Christianity, I think is good that you're kind of like explaining, I guess, like a more Gen Z perception of it. Yeah, so I think that's cool, but I don't know, just don't knock it till you try it, I guess.
Yeah, that's like, and that is that's perfect. That's a perfect way to end this podcast. So, relationship with God, don't knock it till you try it. Love you guys, and we will see you next week.
Joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I got peace like a river, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got love like an ocean in my soul.